We continue today with our series of Should I Shut Down with Part 5, where we dive into the macro scheduling for middle schoolers. This one gets a little bit tricky, especially if you watch last week's with the high schoolers and some of the guidelines we went over with the high school kids. Many of them still apply for the middle school kids, so we're not going to dive into some of that information too much, along with the fact that I think you would understand the process better looking at workload over time if you just go ahead and listen to that video, so we're not going to spend a ton of time on that topic either. What I do want to address is the basic schedule. This is what we have listed for a 13U team that we work with, and then we'll dive into a few of the details regarding middle schoolers with their throwing program. So for a lot of these guys, they are starting their season around the beginning of February, which means usually games sometime in the first 2 weekends there. So they go from the beginning of February till about July 4th. It's 24 weeks. They certainly do not play 24 weeks in a row. Usually it's like a two tournaments every 4 weeks type schedule, or every other weekend. So that goes on, and there's usually a little bit of a break between the spring and the summer here. And then their fall schedule runs from the end of August, sometime around Labor Day they're getting started, and they're going till around Thanksgiving. Same thing, usually every other 2 out of 4, that sort of thing. For the rest breaks, they have a potential for a 5-week rest between Thanksgiving and Christmas there. And the other potential 5-week rest break would be end of or beginning of July till the beginning of August before they start having to ramp up for their fall season. And likewise, day after Christmas, they have suggested to start ramping up to get that 6-week ramp up period in before their season starts in February. So a few things here probably stick out for you. One would be the lack of a rest break that's really much time at all. As far as one goes, obviously together it's 10 weeks. That might not be bad if it was all at once. It's not all at once. And the other thing would be some of these ramp up periods are a little bit short. So I'm going to start there. On a side note, one of the large issues that comes up with youth sports is specialization. We highly recommend that a kid this age, we're talking probably 11 to 13U here, and younger especially, as they get a little bit older, specialization might need to happen. But anyone from that younger age group, 13 or below, we highly recommend they play multiple sports. If they're playing multiple sports, that's usually their shutdown period. We have a group that comes in here to our facility, and a lot of the kids in that team play football. So in the fall, that is their shutdown period. They have it set up so they finish playing tournaments in July. August starts up the fall football season. They play till around Thanksgiving, and then once Thanksgiving happens, they get back into their baseball stuff, but that's their shutdown period. And we love that. Having some time where they get away from baseball, do something different, still have some competition, and still be training in a sense is really good. The other issue with this is a lot of these tournaments are set in stone, and so whoever runs the organization or the team is handcuffed in what they can do with the schedule. In particular, we work with Team Orlando. Jesse Marler runs that and does a really good job developing arms, keeping arms healthy, and trying to work around these guidelines the best he can as far as something like PitchSmart. But he has condensed the schedule, and this is something we specifically talked about, as much as he possibly could without really cutting off some key tournaments. Again, that could be a whole other argument for another day, but he feels like there's no really other way to shorten the season at all for either one of those. So with that particular issue, it's really important that you get in a program that knows how to develop arms, knows how to protect arms, and is happy to take on individual cases and have coaches that communicate and know what's going on. If you throw 50 innings during this 24-week span from spring and summer, and then you have another 35, then you're up around obviously 85 for the year between the spring, summer, and fall. The recommended amount from PitchSmart, again, which is the MLB suggested guidelines, is for a 13 and 14-year-old a max of 100 with a 4-month break overall throughout the course of the year. And they suggest that 2 or 3 of those months are continuous break. Obviously, that is not possible with this schedule right here. 4 months off seems a bit extreme, and again, it kind of depends on the individual case, and that's something we'll touch on a little bit more later. But obviously, if someone's having 85 innings over that year, then the coaches need to be aware of that kid going into the next year, and also if someone ends up throwing maybe 60 innings in the spring and the summer, then the organization needs to be aware of that going into the fall. Maybe they limit him to a lot less. He throws 2 innings a weekend, and now we're at 75, and we've lightened the workload a lot. So there's a few ways around issues like that. And if we look at the rest of the ramp-up period, same thing. Kids coming off of 50 innings in season, they shut down a little bit more here. They ramp him up a little bit slower and get him started more towards the middle of September and give him an extra month there, and save him for more of like a shorter span in the fall. And that's another way where they could really help the individual out, depending on who the coaching staff and what they know what's going on. So the other suggestion that we would highly recommend is getting with an organization that is development first and takes care of their guys and knows what's going on. Each individual does need their own approach to the situation, as we've talked about, in a lot of different areas, and I hope that's something that you guys are understanding. I'm certainly not bashing any of these guidelines at all, but different people need different programs. If someone is throwing 10 innings and 10 innings here, and that's 20 innings throughout the year, their rest and shutdown periods, again, much like the high school kids, are going to be very different. So you have to understand that saying, oh, well, my kid needs 4 months off, I need to do this, isn't necessarily right all the time. Those guidelines are guidelines for a reason. They are based in science. They do make sense, but you can't just blindly apply that to each person. The other thing with dealing with middle schoolers is ramping them up for high school. If they're in the 13-14U system, they're getting ready for high school, which is the schedule we talked about last week. So some of these kids may finish playing in this date around the July 4th weekend. So you might finish 7-8, and then 8-15, you have tryouts. And that's for a high school travel team in the fall. Like we talked about last time, this may not need to be the rest break then. This might need to be some type of velo building or intense throwing program to get them ready for competing against high schoolers now instead of competing against middle schoolers. If that's factored in the fall, we shut them down a little bit earlier in the fall, and they can go from the middle of October until Christmas there. Then we get them 2 full months of shutdown, and they can ramp them back up. So there's many different ways to do it. Don't look at this and freak out and say, hey, my kid's arm's going to blow out if I do this, or have that panicky feeling of like, well, if I don't play this season, then he gets cut from this team, and then this happens. It's all right. We're here to help, for one. So please reach out with any questions you may have about your specific instance with your athlete. And then 2, just know that there are some adjustabilities to be able to build up and shut down certain times of the year. And communication's huge. Talk to the coaches that you guys play with consistently. Do not guest play. That's another big thing. If you're guest playing and you're playing every weekend, that's going to run your inning totals up and put more stress on your body. And do not pitch for 2 teams at once. We do not have middle school baseball here. We have feeder teams where they play maybe once or twice a week. And so if Johnny's throwing 2 innings on Wednesday and 4 innings on Saturday, not a big deal. But if they're throwing 2 on Saturday, 4 on Sunday, and 3 on Tuesday, then we really have an issue. So we highly recommend that you do not pitch for more than 1 team at a time, and preferably don't play for more than 1 team at a time. And that way, this type of communication becomes much easier and much more manageable. So again, if you have any questions, please reach out. It does get a little murky with the middle school schedule, but we want to help each person, and we want to do what's best for the athlete so that they can stay safe and have the best chance to develop to a higher level.